Hi there, Alex here with Beam It Up. Alright, today we're going to talk a little bit about electric tankless water heaters. Mainly because I want to find out why my electric tankless water heater likes my wife way better than it likes me. But it turns out there's a reason for that. So we're going to briefly talk about how tankless water heaters work, how they're laid out. We're going to do a quick description on basic components. We're going to very briefly discuss electric tankless water heater selection. Very briefly, we're going to get deep into this in some other videos, so don't mind this too much. We're going to mention a couple of important factors that we need to keep in mind. We're going to talk a little bit about the mixing valve, which is one of the culprits of this situation. And this is just a brief introduction for my water heater videos in Revit that are coming soon. So let's talk about the original water heater and a typical water heater installation. So in a typical water heater installation, you have your cold water inlet right here. You have your electric tankless water heater, which in this case is this Titan. Then you have the hot water outlet to the hot water system. You also want isolation valves. Ideally, you would like to have one at the inlet and one at the outlet. In some cases, you're going to need a sediment filter to accumulate the sediments down here, and an ACV or automatic control valve, which is going to prevent water backflow and air pockets within your piping. You may also need a PRV or pressure relief valve, which is going to help you whenever there's pressure buildup here. This valve squirts a little bit of water out, relieving the pressure to avoid any damage to the piping or to the equipment. You're also going to need an electrical disconnect to cut power to the water heater for maintenance and emergency purposes. And you're going to need a dedicated breaker, and obviously wiring from the breaker to the disconnect, and then from the disconnect to the heater. So what do we have for the original water heater? Well, we have a Titan N120. It has an electrical input of 11.8 kilowatts at a voltage of 220 volts. It has a current rating of 54 amps, and for that we're going to need a 2-pole 60 amp breaker, just like this one right here. The wiring in this case has to be 6 AWG wire. Like we talk about, we need an AC disconnect right here. And now this is an important point. Whenever you're planning on installing plastic piping, you need to make sure that the first 36 inches at the outlet and the inlet of the water heater are copper, okay? And then you can use plastic piping. You also want to make sure you use compression fittings and no Teflon or paste in those junctions. And as always, make sure you follow the manufacturer's guidelines. And then when you're searching for the water heater, you'll see a technical specification chart just like this one that is going to tell you your maximum flow, your minimum flow, your kW input, volts, amps. And notice that when you're at low GPM or at low flow, then you can achieve a very high delta T, a very high temperature increase. But as your flow starts increasing, then your delta T has to drop, because you only have so much energy available. You have 11.8 kW, and that has to go to an increase in temperature. So if you have to heat up a lot more water, you cannot heat it up too much as far as delta T. So that's my old water heater. And when it was removed, I ended up taking it apart because I wanted to show you the internal components, or at least the most common internal components of an electric tankless water heater. So some of the basic components would be the cold water inlet would be right here. Then you have a flow meter somewhere around here. Then you have a heating element, which was screwed in here too tight and I couldn't take it apart, but I took a picture out of the internet and I pasted it here. So that's what's screwed in here. And that heating element is screwed into a heating chamber, which is this here. In this case, this is a double heating chamber or a dual heating chamber. Then you have your hot water outlet right here. And you have a PC board and some form of terminal box, and then you have the temperature set point adjustment buttons. In this case there were just two here. It was pretty basic, and in some of them you have some kind of display. You'll see the new one, it has a nice digital display, but this one, was very basic. Alright, so let's see what's the situation with the water heater. The situation is that you have a mixing valve for the shower, right? And then you have cold water going in the shower, with a certain GPM of cold water, and then you have hot water going into the mixing valve with a certain GPM of hot water. And then once they mix, they go up at a certain GPM of mixed water, which is gonna come out of your shower head. And that shower head in this case is rated for 1.5 GPM. So what happens? Well, the GPM of the mixed water, which is this one here, is gonna be equal to the GPM of the cold water plus the GPM of the hot water. That's what we have here. So as you increase the cold water into the mixing valve, the hot water into the mixing valve has to decrease. In Anna's case, that's not a problem because she uses a lot of hot water. So most of this GPM is coming out of the hot water side. Let's say if 1.5 is the total, let's say 0.5 is coming out of the cold water, and then 1 whole GPM is coming out of the hot water. So at 1 GPM, the flow sensor of the old water heater was definitely kicking in. But in my case, I like a little bit more of cold water. So let's say, just for example, that in my case I want a full GPM of cold water. That full GPM of cold water is gonna leave only 0.5 GPM of hot water, and that 0.5 GPM wasn't enough to kick in the old water heater. What to do? Well, you get a lower activation flow water heater. So I got this Emax Home Advantage 2, which is essentially the equivalent, 13 kW, 240 volts, 54 amps. So I'm still going to be able to use my 2-pole 60 amp breaker and the 6-inch AWG wire and the same 1/2-inch cold water inlet and hot water outlet. But what I love about this model is that the activation is 0.3 gallons per minute. So that's going to be a lot better than what I had before. And in addition to that, I'll have the digital display, and I'll have this knob that will let me adjust the temperature to the exact degree of the outlet water that I want. And in this case, we're not going to perform calculations for the water heater because it's going to be a 1-to-1 replacement, and we have a fixed 60 amp double pole breaker available. So that's what we have, and we have to live with it. But if you want to dive into how to properly select electric tankless water heaters or any other water heater, you definitely can go to bimitup.com and get some training there. Anyway, just for reference, this is always going to come from the first law of thermodynamics with some simplifications, and you're going to end up with some version of the electrical power is going to be equal to your water flow times your specific heat times your increase in temperature. But in any case, the manufacturer provides you with this type of table on which you come in with your desired delta T. Let's say our inlet temperature is 60 Fahrenheit, right? And we're at 100 Fahrenheit as a discharge. So that would be a delta T of 40, right? So you would go up here until you reach the GPM that you need. In our case, it's gonna be way less than 2 GPM because the whole shower is less than 1.5. So we should definitely be okay with a 12 kW, assuming that we don't have too much water demand anywhere else, or that we want to use some kind of diversity there. So for our new water heater, we have an Emax Home Advantage 2. Here it is, Home Advantage. This is 13 kW, 240 volts. I'm going to be able to keep my 1/2-inch cold water inlet and my 1/2-inch hot water outlet completely intact because it's a straight through heater. See, many other heaters like this here, they have the cold water inlet at the bottom and then the hot water outlet at the top. So I couldn't have used any of these heaters. Thankfully, I found this straight through heater that has the same configuration. It has the same amperage rating, 54 amps. So I'll be able to reuse my 2-pole 60 amp breaker. I'll be able to reuse my wiring. I'll be able to reuse my AC disconnect. And I'll have a nice digital display and a nice digital control degree by degree. And the best of all, I'll have a lower activation flow of 0.3 GPM. So that makes me really happy. And if you're serious about your professional training, go ahead and visit us at bimitup.com. And over there you can contact me directly for some top of the line training. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you smash that like button down there, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell so you get notified. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.